Are there any general guidelines for training with RPE, particularly in regards to how often and in what context RPE 10 can be considered a productive training stress? Are there any guidelines? I'm not aware of any like practice guidelines for RPE and like when to use 10s, when to use RPE 10, when to use RPE 9, when to use RPE 8. So no, as far as my general recommendation, my gestalt based on coaching and using RPE to communicate how hard things should be with people for, I don't know, the better part of the last 6 years, almost exclusively. I rarely program RPE 10s outside of a testing situation or meet situation because I just don't think it's worth it. Meaning that I don't think that the fatigue is worth the potential stimulus that you get out of that. I think that most efforts should be somewhere in that RPE 6 to 8 range in general. That doesn't mean you never go to 9 or you never do a set at 5, but it just means in most of the sets I think should be RPE 6 to 8. And that's, as far as a general guideline, like that's as close as I can get. The rep schemes can obviously vary across that, but I don't know that I'd spend too much time working well below RPE 6 or well above RPE 8. Maybe here and there, but not a lot.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that hopefully what you guys took away from the programming lecture is we're aiming to deliver a stimulus to the individual to elicit a response. And the weight we put on the bar is exclusively selected as a strategy to get a particular response out of somebody. And one metric of that internal load, that response that we're looking for, is RPE. And I don't know that I really almost ever in a training context want to elicit a 10 out of 10 situation, because the closer you get to that 10 out of 10 effort, you may be getting incrementally greater stimulus, but I think the rate that the fatigue cost goes up way faster. And unless there is some particular reason why the performance on that set in that session matters a whole lot, which can't really think of too many situations where that would be the case, then it's probably not worth the cost. I mean, there are sometimes where you're just like going for some arbitrary PR because you want to.
Sure.
Like I can think of last fall, I squatted 500 for 10.
I thought you were gonna say 2 days ago.
No. But that time I was only supposed to squat it for 8, and I squatted it for 8, and I was like, I think I got 10, and 10 would just be cool to do, so I'm just gonna do this, right? But I would not program that ahead of time to say, I'm gonna go to 10 today because I think that this is a valuable training stress. That was an excessive amount of fatigue generated from that session, and I wouldn't say I regret doing it, but I wouldn't have programmed it ahead of time. You could make a case for going closer to failure on isolation type movements. That has been discussed. Still don't think that you need to go to 10, no. But when you're talking about general guidelines for training with RPE, I think that we can get a reasonably good training stimulus staying further away from failure on our compound movements, along with specific practice for your task, like single at 7, single at 8, double at 7, double at 8, etc.
Yeah.
But for isolation stuff, you can go closer to failure because in general the systemic fatigue you're going to get out of it, right? Taking your tricep press downs to failure or something, like whatever, like it's not going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah. Thought is that if you let people go to failure to RPE 10, that helps them calibrate their RPE scale. I know that it is an argument. I just think it's relatively weak because I don't necessarily care how accurate the RPE rating is, just as long as you're using the same scale each time, so the precision is still high. But that is an argument. And
sure.
Okay.
Yep.